In this video, we are going to create a web scraping script that will go and attach to Trader Joe's website, and it will scrape the locations of Trader Joe's stores. Um, the context for why we may want to do this is, say, for instance, we were working for Trader Joe's and we wanted to help them be able to determine where might some good places to open up their stores be. Um, this would be a good analysis to perform. Alternatively, if we also were, let's say we were working for, um, if we were working for Trader Joe's and we wanted to figure out where they should open their stores, we could actually do this for multiple different companies besides just Trader Joe's. We could do this for some of their near competitors, and then we could map out all the store locations of their competitors, and from that we could get a good idea of where might be a good place for them to open up a store based off that. To get started, we will go to stores and then we'll go to location by state. And then this gives us a list of stores that of all the stores that they have. And then if I click on one of these states, it will give me the different locations within that state. And then if I click on that location, I will get the store, and I get the address, the phone number, and the zip code and everything, and I can view more details if I want to. But before we jump into scraping this data, we want to observe the hierarchy of how this website is put together. So we have this main page, and this main page has stores on it. This main page represents all the different state locations. And then if I click on one of the states, it will give me all the different store locations within that state. And then if I click on that store location, then I get the address. And ultimately, this is the information that I want. So thinking through this, my thought process of how we are going to set up this web scraping algorithm is, first, I want to create some kind of function that could get me this information. And specifically, I'm just going to be looking for the zip code because I don't necessarily need the exact address and it's just easier to work with zip code. So I'm going to create a function where I enter this URL into that function and it should return the zip code to me. So that is function number one. Function number two, I want a function that will give me the URLs for all of these different store locations so that I can enter the URLs of those store locations into function one to get the zip codes from each one of those store locations. So this is going to be function number two. I want a function where I can import this URL, and then it's going to return back to me all of these URLs. And finally, I want function number three, which will give me all of these URLs so I can plug those into function number two. So I want a function where I just plug in this this location's URL, and it will give me back a list of all of these state URLs. So I'll plug in our main URL into function number three. That will return me a list of URLs of each of the states. I can then import that list of URLs into function number two. That will give me the list of URLs for stores within those states. And then from that mega list of store URLs, I can then plug that into function number one that will return the zip codes for each of the store locations. So it's always important because web scraping does depend on what website you're going to be scraping. It's important that you do it in a way that you understand the architecture of the website. But now that we have a good understanding of the architecture of our website and what we're going to be doing, let's go back to our Python environment in Google Colab. I am going to enter a new section of text, and I'm just going to call this Trader Joe's store locations. Okay, I'm going to add some new code. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import pandas as usual, so we can work with data frames. Then I'm going to import requests that will allow us to connect to the internet, so we can connect to Trader Joe's webpage. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to import something called Beautiful Soup. And what Beautiful Soup is, it's a package that will go through and parse out the HTML text, and it'll make it in a format that's very easy for us to read within our Python environment. I'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. But then we need our URL. For right now, it doesn't really matter. We'll come back to the URL. But first, I'm going to just import those packages. Since we want to start with function 1, let's start with the most basic of URLs, or the most granular of URLs, which is the store URL. So I'm going to copy this store URL and just keep it as a temporary URL for us. Then I'm going to use requests, and I'm going to create a request variable, and then I'm going to set that equal to requests.get, and then I'm going to get our URL. And let's just make sure that comes out fine. Okay, awesome. We got a 200 response. That means we were successfully able to connect. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the source content, and I'm going to make that equal to our request.content. We can see what that looks like here. And so you see, I send out a request and I get the content. However, it's very messy in the format that it's currently in, and it's very hard to read. So this is where Beautiful Soup comes in. So I am going to use Beautiful Soup on our source. And then I am going to use its HTML parser to go through all of this raw text and parse it in a way that is a little bit more, that'll be easier for us to work with moving forward. And I'm just going to call that soup. And if I run that, now you'll look at, you can look at this and see that while it's still a lot of text, it's in a format that's much easier for us to be able to read and interact with. So that is the use of using Beautiful Soup. Okay, now that we have our soup, the next thing we're going to want to do, and we're working on making what we'll call function 1 here, is we want to be able to extract the zip code from this URL, from this page. So I'm going to inspect elements, and then I'm going to try to find the closest element to where our zip code is. And I can see that zip code is in span. Now, something I could do is I could use a function that says get span, but you can see there's a lot of different span elements, and it'd be very difficult for me to go through all of the different span elements. So instead, I'm going to go up a little bit, and I'm going to see if I can find the next best parent element. I see that there's this parent element called div with a class that's equal to address left. Now, there are a lot of div elements in this page. However, this has a special marking saying class address left. And what is nice about that marking is it's specific to just this div element. So what I can do is I can go back to my code, and what I want to do is I want to go to soup, and then I want to find that div element. You see, if I do this, if I just try to find div, it will return the first div element on the page. However, if I specify what class it is, address left, I can set attributes equal to, and then pass in a dictionary, and I want to get the attribute class, and I want the class to be equal to address left. Now if I do this, you see I get that one div element, and I am much closer to getting my zip code that I want. So I'm going to call this address underscore div. I'm going to make that equal to soup find div with the class address left. So now what I want to do is I can now I want to get this zip code. And what I can do is I can use the same kind of logic we had here. And I want to find all the spans. I want to find the span that has it. Now there isn't a particular class for address span. However, I am guessing, as you can see with most of the store locations, they only have they have the zip codes in the same format. So I can go ahead and just find it's safe for me to guess that the zip code is going appear in the same location, so I can specify that location. So I'm going to use a find all function, and then I am going to use then I'm going to I want to find all spans. And when I run that, I'll get a list of different spans. And if I go through that list, you can see the different spans that I get. So I'll keep going through that until I find the span I want. And you see if I go to span 4 here, that gives me the zip code. Now I'm not quite done yet. You see, I still have this element that I want. So first I want to just turn this into text. However, it's also would be good if I strip it, just in case if there's any other new lines or anything that ends up to appear in there. So I'm going to call that zip code. Okay, and that gets us our zip code. I do want to show you one other alternative to being able to get a zip code like this. That's also useful in web scraping, called regular expressions. All what a regular expression is you can think of it like a search query. When you search for a word, you are essentially using a regular expression, and you're saying, I want to find all the text that matches this word that I search for. What regular expressions are is basically a format that allows you to it allows you to be able to go through and better be able to search for different words. So I can use the regular expression to find zip codes. And I'm going to use regular expression zip code pattern, and that would be equal to RE compile, and then I'll type in my regular expression \B to introduce that it's a new expression. I want it to either be 5 characters or want to identify if there's an S after it. And you don't need to understand what's going on here. Regular expressions are a little bit outside the scope of this class, but I just want to show you an alternative for being able to find zip codes. Let's see, what did I do wrong here? Oh, I didn't close this off with a parentheses. There we go. Now we have a regular expression finder, and you can see um if I use our regular expression to search for a zip code pattern in our addresses. You can see that it also finds that same zip code. Now, what this is doing is it's just simply looking for a sequence of where there is 5 numbers. So this is a very simple regular expression that's looking for a sequence of 5 numbers together with nothing around it, and it's just assuming that is a zip code. However, this regular expression wouldn't work in our case because if we go, say like we go to another location, I'm just going to go here to California, and then I'll enter in our URL, I'll enter in our URL here and run all this again. I come down here, you see that I get a different zip code for the one and that the R function found. And the reason why is because there is a sequence of 5 words in the address that appears before the zip code. So the regular expression sees this sequence of 5 words before the zip code, and it automatically assumes that this is the zip code. So we're not going to use regular expressions. We're not going to use regular expressions for this website. However, I do want you guys just to be aware of it and know that it is a tool that you can use that is very powerful when web scraping. I'm going to leave this in the example code, but I'm going to just clear this out of our way just to keep things a little bit cleaner. So we have this nice function that we have. However, we still have one problem. I'm going to clean this up. As you see that this works very well when there's only one store in a state. However, we're in a city, but what if we go to some place like California, we go to a major densely populated city such as, let's see, where's Los Angeles? If we go to, here we go, Los Angeles. You see that Los Angeles has multiple stores in that city. If we plug that in as our URL, we decide that we want to look at Los Angeles. You see, we only get one zip code, even though there are a lot of different zip codes here. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to really quickly comment these out. I'm going to change this from find to find all. And then I'm going to make this address divs. And what this will do now is it will give me all divs that meet this parameter. And it will return a list of all the different divs that I have. So here we go. We see we have this address 9036. I go to element 4. Now it's 90064. We get a different zip code and address. So now that I have all the divs that I want, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a for loop based off this. Well, actually, before I do a for loop, I want to make a list of our zip codes. So I'm going to make a list, an empty list of zip codes, just make a variable called zip codes, make it equal to a list. Now I'm going to have a for loop, and I'm going to say for div in address divs. I am going to make our zip code, this is just going to be a temporary zip code, equal to, okay, so we're cycling through divs here. So for the div, that is what the zip code is going to be. And then I want to take our list of zip codes and I'm going to add that zip code to our list that we got. And I need to make sure I put zip code in these brackets here, or else it's going to think as the string, as each letter in the string as individual elements of the zip code. So I'd get 9, 0, 0, 2, 8, which I don't want. I want each zip code to be their own element. So I can then go ahead and run that, and you see now I get a list of all the zip codes. So we have all the basic elements that we need. Now we just need to turn this into a function. So I'm going to take all of this here. I'm going to bring it all down into just one block of code that we have here. So let's just make sure that works. Okay, that works. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function and I'm going to call this zip code extract. And I'm going to pass in URL is going to be our parameter. Going to tab all this over, and then I want it to return our zip codes. Oh, and I forgot to put a colon after that, but if I run that, now I have this function. And if I take this function that we made, and I plug in our URL up here, you'll see that it returns the zip codes. So this is, I'm just going to comment this for your guys' sake, this is function number 1. Okay, so we can get the zip codes given that we are given a city. Now we want to get all of the cities, or we want to get all the locations in a state. So this is going to be the next thing we're going to be working on. So I'm going to get rid of that really quick, and we're going to be recycling a lot of this code. So why not I just take this, I'm going to reuse this. Let's use a new URL here. see, California is a good one. We will use California. That would be our input URL. And what we're hoping to do is we want to get a list of all of these URLs. So we start out with just the basics. We can look at we can look at our content that we have. So we're going to do something very similar. I'm going to copy this code since we're going to be doing something really similar here. So we want to find all these URLs. Let me inspect the elements. I can see that they are all of class item list. However, item list seems to be a pretty common, might be a common class name. We could experiment with it. I feel like it's a little bit risky though. So instead, I'm just going to pick this div class called column mid 12. Okay, so we go down here. We want to get all divs with the class column mid 12. I'm going to change this from now. There's only one div that we're looking for. I'm just going to say this is locations div, and rather than use soup find all, I'm just going to find that one div, and we can then look at that, and then that gives us that main div that we're looking for. Now what we see is we have these links, which is what we ultimately want to get. So if you notice though, you have to find the element that these links are stored in. And it would seem that these links are stored in this A link. Or this A element. So now that we have that, I want to find all and then just A's. And that gives us all the A's which have all the URLs in it that we want to get. I'm going to just call this location A. So now we want to, if we have like one of these location A's, let's just look at one of these elements. What I can do is I can use a get function on it, and I'll use get its reference. And if I run that, that should give me the URL. So now that I know how that I can go on and extract this, I'm going to turn this into, like we just did, a for loop. So I'm going to go for A in the locations. I want to do a.get. I'll tab that. And I also want to create a list of the URLs we are getting. I'll make an empty list. And then I want to append that list with these URLs. And if I do that, I get a list of all of the different location URLs. So now all we want to do is we want to turn this into a function. So I'm going to call this location URLs. And our input parameter will be a URL, and then it will return our URLs. Run that to make sure it works, and then we can test this out. Let's try this location URLs, and if I plug in URL, there we go. We get all of our location URLs. So this is function 2 that we needed. And finally, we can go to, now that we have all of our store URLs given a location, our location URLs given a state URL, now we just need a way to be able to get all these state URLs. So let me go back. I'm going to reset what our URL is equal to, so we can play around with that. Now, what we're going to want to do is, you know what, a lot of the code here is actually probably going to be very similar. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy all of this back, since we're doing something almost the same thing. I'm guessing that this is going to be a middle column. We can see what elements these are in. And if we look, yep, it's still in column mid 12. So I can reuse that code again. I'm going to change this though from locations div to states div, and then location, and then I'm going to change this to states a and then I'm going to change this to states a, just for fun. I'm going to run that and see if that gives me what I'm looking for. Let's see. Okay, wait. This is still looking at locations div. And there we go. With almost minimal change to our previous code, we were able to get all of our state URLs. So let's turn this into a function as well. I'm going to call this def state URL, and then it's going to take a URL as the parameter, and then it's going to return that list of URLs. And we can test that out really fast. The URL. And there we go. We have our function 3. So now we have all the functions necessary to scrape and get all the list of all the URLs. So now we just can create a simple for loop that will go through and print out create a list of our zip codes. So I'm just going to move this down here because this will be our main URL. I'm then going to create a new list called zip codes. I'm going to make that equal to an empty list. Then what I want to do is I'm going to create a couple nested for loops. I'm first going to create for loop that cycles through our states. So for the states in state URLs, given the URL, then for locations in locations URL given the state URL that we got here, that we get from here. I am then going to create a temporary zip code value that is equal to zip code extract given the location. And actually, and then just for fun, so we can see progress, because this script is going to take forever, we just want to print out the zip codes to make sure that it's running. And then I'm going to take our zip codes list that we have, and I want to use the extend function. That way we're not adding a list of lists together, but rather we're just extending the elements of a list. I'm going to add our list of zip codes to our ultimate zip codes list. And hopefully I run that and that works. And there we go. We are scraping all of the zip code locations from Trader Joe's. Now this can take a while, so I'm going to let that run. I'm going to pause the recording and then come back to and then resume it once this is done scraping. Okay, now that has finished, you can see that we collected a ton of zip codes. Really quickly, if I want to spot check this, I can just look at the size of our list of zip codes. You'll see that I have 547 different zip codes, which seems to be about right. And if I look at this list, you can see that we have a nice list of all the different zip codes of all the different locations that Trader Joe's is in.